with China in the field of tourism. He said the talks with the Chinese foreign minister discussed regional issues, including the Palestinian cause. For his part, the Chinese foreign minister said the talks witnessed consensus on many files. He said Beijing comprehensively supports the developmental path in Egypt. For his part, the Chinese foreign minister expressed keenness on boosting cooperation with Cairo on all levels, especially the cultural, scientific and industrial fields. He also said the foreign interventions is one of the challenges the Middle East countries face. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Hussein Hareedy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ambassador Hareedy, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador Hareedy.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Ambassador. How do you weigh the timing of the visit by the Chinese foreign minister to Cairo?
Well, this is the first time the new Chinese foreign minister visits Cairo,
yes,
in the context of a tour where he would visit several African countries. I guess this is a visit that aims at reviewing the status of Egyptian-Chinese relations on the one hand, and discussing the future prospects and horizons of this deep relationship that amounts to a framework, a strategic framework among the two countries.
yes.
And as we heard the two foreign ministers, the Egyptian and the Chinese ministers, I guess there is a joint will between Cairo and Beijing in strengthening further the bilateral relations among the two, between the two countries in all fields, in the context of the framework agreement, the strategic framework agreement that is signed between China and Egypt.
Yes, indeed. Ambassador Hareedy, how would you describe ties between Cairo and Beijing in light of the visit by the Chinese top diplomat?
Would you please repeat the question, madam, because I didn't hear quite.
How would you describe the ties here between both countries, Egypt and China?
Well, I would say that the relations between Egypt and China could be considered a model of relationship between a great power and a medium power like Egypt. On the other hand, as you may know, madam, relations between China and Egypt, they go back to the mid-50s of the last century. And in fact, Egypt was the first Arab, African, and Muslim country to recognize the People's Republic of China. And ever since 1955, the date where Egypt had recognized diplomatically the People's Republic of China,
yes,
relations between the two countries really have been strengthening, which indicate that the two countries have almost similar point of view concerning whether their bilateral relations or world affairs.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Ambassador, both the Egyptian and Chinese sides have expressed keenness in exerting their strategic partnership to extend their partnership further. How would this benefit both sides from your point of view, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, it would benefit a lot Egypt in its ambitious plans, whether in the economic field or the scientific and technological field. China is achieving great strides in technology and in the new technologies, and I guess Egypt stands to benefit a lot in really widening the scope of cooperation with China in this field. Having said that, I guess the Chinese companies are working in Egypt, madam, in this field, in construction, in public works, and I guess we stand to benefit a lot in deepening our relations with China in these fields.
Indeed. Sir, actually the Chinese foreign ministers over the past decades have started their tenures visiting to Africa, expressing keenness on ties with the Black continent. How would you describe the race here for investment in the African markets by the superpowers, especially the Chinese?
Well, China is among the first powers, world powers, to show interest in developing and promoting its relations with Africa.
Indeed.
And lately, we have seen that the United States on its also has shown a keen interest in strengthening and deepening its ties with Africa with the summit, the summit of African leaders that was hosted by the United States President Joe Biden in Washington last December. So the fact of the matter is Africa could benefit from this rivalry and this competition between the great powers to open up on Africa. It remains to be seen whether there will be an African plan and an African vision to how to benefit from the interest, the keen interest shown by the great powers in Africa.
Yes. Sir, how this race between the different superpowers has been affected by the economic decline following the coronavirus pandemic as well as the Russian-Ukrainian war?
May you repeat the question, please, madam?
Yes. How this race between the different superpowers concerning the investment in the African continent been affected due to the coronavirus pandemic and its repercussions, as well as the Russian-Ukrainian war?
Well, I guess African countries and Egypt in particular have made clear that as far as the war in Ukraine is concerned, they want a peaceful resolution of the war. And for various reasons, among them, of course, that their food security has been negatively impacted by this war. And of course, that's one. On the other hand, as far as the pandemic is concerned, of course, we welcome cooperation between the Chinese government and the World Health Organization and other countries in order to contain the pandemic and to make sure that there is transparency and accountability in dealing with this pandemic matter.
Yes. In the past meetings, actually, both China and the African states stressed cooperation within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative in order to achieve the two sides' common interest in progress and development. How would the Belt and Road Initiative change the economic weight of the world from your point of view, Ambassador Hareedy?
Well, in the present international context and regional context, I guess all sides stand to benefit from transparency, from accountability, from having a vision, a joint vision of how to move ahead and face jointly the many challenges, whether security, economic, health-wise, financial, food security are concerned. The challenges are really great, but of course we detect a will on the part of major powers of tackling them jointly and constructively, madam.
Yes, also the talks between the two top diplomats discussed regional issues, including the Palestinian cause. What role can China play here in this regard?
China considers itself a developing country. Having said that, China has made tremendous progress, and really experts believe that China could become in the next few years the first world economy. I guess that China could really help a lot developing countries and Egypt in the implementation of their sustainable development plans. And on the other hand, China could play a role, whether bilaterally or whether through the international fora like the G20 meetings, could play a role in helping in various attempts of debt relief for African countries.
Yes, indeed. Sir, also the Chinese foreign minister expressed keenness on boosting cooperation with Cairo on all levels, especially the cultural, scientific and industrial fields. What's your take on that?
Well, of course, this is welcome, and Egypt stands ready to work with China in all these fields, madam. And of course, as we said earlier, relations between the two countries date back to the mid-50s of last century, and they cover all fields of bilateral relations between countries. And I guess both countries can look to the future with optimism and in the belief that they can work together for the benefits, their own benefits. And their own interests, madam.
Yes.
Excuse me, I have to go now, madam, because I have a meeting right now.
Indeed, Ambassador Hussein Hareedy, we thank you so much for your precious input. And indeed, a very important press conference was held earlier today by Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry and his Chinese counterpart. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, during the press conference, was visiting Chinese Foreign Minister Shi Qiang in Cairo, and speaking at the press conference, he lauded the role of the Chinese companies in implementing the developmental projects in Egypt. He said that his meeting with his Chinese counterpart discussed bilateral ties and common interests. He described Egyptian-Chinese ties as historic and said both countries have civilizations that impacted human history. Shoukry said that China is interested in continuing cooperation in the industrial technological fields, and he welcomed cooperation with China in the field of tourism. He said the talks with the Chinese foreign minister discussed regional issues of mutual concern, including the Palestinian cause. For his part, the Chinese foreign minister said the talks witnessed consensus on many files. He said that Beijing comprehensively supported the developmental path in Egypt, and the Chinese foreign minister expressed keenness on boosting cooperation with Cairo on all levels, especially the cultural, scientific and industrial fields. He also said that the foreign interventions is one of the challenges the Middle East countries face. Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today.